on to as you for those who they follow on Twitter, and of course, you know what we want to talk. And of course, those who are joining us, you don't know, our focus just of agribusiness. You all know much the fundamentals of everything about
agriculture. Definitely, the much I've read on what experts are saying, and of course, the little we're taught in school. So, but today, I have experts, professionals, those who are doing this for over the years now, and they have so much experience to share on what agribusiness is all about and the fundamentals of agribusiness. So, first, I introduce popularly known as Auntie Ellen. Yes, Ellen Imore. You're welcome to the program. Huh?
Thank you very much, Sweetie. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, and yes, she's the CEO of Auntie Ellen Foods. She's a SME consultant and coach. In fact, she did into so many things. That is what you know. But our primary purpose for today is agribusiness. So you're welcome once again, ma.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and also the other Oga wey dey join me on the program is he preferred to be referred to as Awe Onisokuso. Yeah, and if you are Yoruba, you understand what that means. He is the CEO of, you are smiling, sir. He's the CEO of integrated cassava processing and allied industry. Yes, Awe Onisokuso. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Nice to be on.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ma, let's start the conversation. First, I know those who are watching us want to know what is agribusiness.
Okay, so what is agribusiness? Agribusiness is business that relates to everything in creating value in agriculture, from rearing animals to planting crops to processing them to logistics to trading to input to advisory to regulatory, everything that has to do with making agriculture and agricultural products, turn them into value and deliver to people. So agribusiness is everything that has to do with the business of agriculture. And this is along the value chain and the entire ecosystem. That means that from when you plant a crop to when it gets to the table, from when an animal is conceived to when it gets to the table, there are a lot of things that happens. But the only thing that we see is the things in the value chain. So you plant a crop, you cultivate it, you harvest it, you process it, you distribute it, and you sell. But there are so many other things that happen around that value chain. Outside the value chain, there are other things that happen. There's financing, there's transportation, there are regulatory issues, there are economic issues, there are lobbying issues. Okay, there are conflicts, there are weather issues. So there's so many things that happens in agriculture that are in agribusiness that are not in the value chain. So those are the components that make up the agribusiness that we are talking about. So agriculture, yes, it has been with us, but when we talk about agribusiness, it looks at other things within the ecosystem of the value chain, meaning apart from those things that you can see, there are so many other things that happen that we can identify and people can bring their strengths into. That is the broad spectrum of agribusiness.
Okay. Is there something you like to add to that, or something she missed out talking about what agribusiness is about?
Oh, well, she didn't miss out anything. That was an excellent overview of what agribusiness entails. She said it all. The only thing I might just chip in is, the difference between agriculture and the business is that, we have a limited amount of land resources to grow crops and to rear animals, and we have an increasing population. So we have to marry these two variables and create a sustainable means whereby we can keep on feeding and clothing or and housing our increasing population with the limited land resources. So the concept of agribusiness is all about marrying all these together such that we can increase production, people can make a living, and we can also meet the needs of our ever increasing population on Earth. So that's basically what agribusiness is all about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I want to believe that I understand the difference now between agriculture and agribusiness. Well, but then let's come to the fundamentals. What are the fundamentals of agribusiness? Ellen.
Okay, so when you say fundamentals here, it is a very, very broad, it's a very broad spectrum. But agribusiness, as we know it, is driven primarily by the activities of animal husbanding and cropping. If you take away production of food, either through animals or through crops, we really don't have agribusiness. Now, there's something Awoni Sokuso said, which is sustainability of food production. Those are the things that are driving agribusiness now. So the first fundamental is that first, you have to look at agribusiness as being driven by production of crops and production of animals. Now, a lot of things happen around the production of crops and animals. So if I want to talk about fundamentals, I will use the framework of looking at first strategy. What is the strategy around the production of a crop or an animal? Second, operations. What practices do we use? What are the practices? What kind of agricultural practices are we using? Are they sustainable? Can we continue like this? Does it take into consideration the changes in the environment? Can we produce animals and crops and food in a way that our children will also be able to have food and animals, the crops and animals to eat? So strategy, operations, I'll look at finance. How easy is it to fund agricultural activities and activities in the agribusiness ecosystem? I would also look at technology. I'll look at other resources as people. I will look at regulation. So when you talk about fundamentals, those are the things that drive the growth of agribusiness in any environment. And it's not just in Nigeria, it's not just in Africa, it is a global phenomenon. And just like I always said, land is a finite resource. You cannot create more land as it is, you cannot create more water. It seems like the planet has boundaries. And so we have to now begin to produce within the resources that we have. However, these are driven by different things, by the strategy of the country or the region. It's also driven by operations. How do we practice agriculture? How do we practice agribusiness? How many people are interested? What is the attitude towards it? Okay, it's driven by finance, it's driven by resources, and under resources, you can talk about technology, you can talk about people, you can talk about other complements. So by the system, by the regulations, by the government. So agribusiness is like any other business that is driven by the fundamentals of the environment in which it is. So strategy, operations, finance, technology, and other resources, including regulation. So all of them contribute together to drive agribusiness anywhere in the world. And Nigeria is not different. And I'm sure we will have more to add to what I just said.
Yeah, I was going to come to that way that yes, you've touched on the so many aspects, and in fact, talking about the fundamentals. And you mentioned land, which we talked about the other time. According to agricultural minister, they said one of the advantage we have is land. We have arable space over 80 million hectares of land that we have to cultivate, and we've not even cultivated up to 50% of that. So how would you put, is that a challenge to growing, developing the agribusiness in Nigeria, are we?
Well, well, I wouldn't say it's a challenge. Well, our major challenges in Nigeria, basically is a limited economic growth, combined with a geographical, or more like virtually, increasing rate of population expansion. So, what's happening now is that when we have a situation where our arable land is less than 50% cultivated, it means that we have not yet reached our potential. We've not reached our potential, what we can actually do, what we can actually produce. We've not yet even begun to, reach the full potential of what we can produce in terms of the arable land within our, within our boundary of Nigeria. So that's basically it. So we've not yet achieved our potential at all. So that's our challenge. The first challenge is how to utilize our resources, how to utilize our full resources in terms of land, and then also how to maximize that land, because we have an increasing population which keeps on going up. We need to be able to fashion a strategy that maximizes that land and produces more from it, so that we can have not just enough to feed our own people, but even some extra that we can export in exchange for hard currency. So that's basically the challenge.
Okay, thank you very much. Because the purpose of this discussion is I want us to really focus on the processing and manufacturing. Because
Okay.
now that you touched on exports, if I recall correctly, one of the major, on several occasions that the former Minister for Agriculture, Adu Ogbe, had to address functions, he complained about the amount we spend on food imports, rising into hundreds of billions that we spend into food imports. And there were projections on how to really cut on the importation of food into the country. So now that you talked about not just feeding ourselves, which is one of the goals of this administration, food security. So how well are we doing in terms of reducing the amount we are spending on imports of food? Not forgetting that majority of the food that we spend money on are processed food. These are not just the agricultural produce. These are the processed agricultural produce. So maybe we'll start with you. How much have we really reduced the imports of processed food?
Well, importation of processed food, in fact, we have not done very well at all, to be very honest. We still, we like to, we may point at some big wins, like with rice, and some other little, food where we have made some little inroads. But when you look at the general picture, there's still so much that we are importing that we can actually produce at home. It is actually ridiculous. There's so much. If you point at any part of the value chain, or any crop, any livestock, except for maybe beef and rice, I can't find any other place where we actually produce significantly enough of what we consume. We do so much of importation. We do so much of importation. Talking about even tomato paste, one of Africa's largest producers of tomatoes, and we import so much tomato paste. Although that is going down as well slightly. We import milk. Despite the fact that we have the third or fourth largest collection of cattle in Africa, behind Ethiopia and probably Tanzania, we are third, and we still import milk. You cannot have so much in terms of capacity to produce milk, and we are still importing the things the milk that we take. There's so many other parts of it. Then even when you leave direct food, when you go indirect, industrial feedstock like, for example, starch. Starch. Talk about other starch additive or starch products. Like, there's so many things that they use in industry, and we are importing everything. And what's happening in Nigeria is that we produce so much of these crops, and most of these crops go to waste. It's either we don't store them properly, or most of them, they don't get sold and they get wasted. They just get rotting on the field. And then we still go with our scarce resources, our scarce exchange, and we go to import this stuff from abroad. So it's really like a very, very funny situation where you have something, you allow it to go to waste, then our people, the youth in the urban areas and in the rural areas, they are, without work, and then we now go and import these same things from abroad. It does not make any sense. So we are not doing well at all in terms of, cutting down what we import and producing at all. We are not doing well, but I have confidence that probably this crisis of the COVID-19 will straighten us out a bit and bring us more to what we need to do to produce more of this at home. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Auntie Ellen, I know you have so much to add to that.
Okay, all right. So when it comes to processing, first to recognize that we are a people who are very short-term orientation, meaning trading provides returns faster than manufacturing. So that's number one, is a disincentive for a lot of Nigerians to invest in processing businesses. So most times the people you find doing processing in Nigeria are highly creative and cerebral people who think they can provide a solution, or foreign investors, mostly Asians, who are used to manufacturing in their own country. They come to Nigeria, they bring the discipline, they bring some technology, they get some access to funding from their export-import banks, and then they start operations. So they tend to be very focused, very experienced, and they have a long-term perspective. They're not looking to make money now and today, which is the way the average Nigerian thinks. Having been in processing for the past 2.5 years and trying to grow the business, I know what I have seen in terms of engagement with people. They don't understand it. They are not patient enough. They don't have patient capital. People want to see quick growth. They want to see fast returns. So they're not ready to wait for 5 years before you pay a dividend, which is what is likely to happen if you invest in a manufacturing concern. And then if you take a loan to start a manufacturing business, you are just not going to grow the business steadily, because you are just going to be using your sales revenue to service loans. So that makes it very difficult. So investment is a major challenge, and interest in investment is a major challenge as well. And people will give you the normal reasons, which include weak infrastructure, a tough operating environment. I totally agree that those ones are there. In fact, they are a reality. I mean, imagine during this COVID period, even though the government said that people in food, if you are carrying anything food, you can have free passage, the police still collects money from them. It happened to us. I'm saying this authoritatively. The policemen will stop you and still collect money from you. It was not until the lockdown was eased that we now had some respite. So at some point, I had to actually stop my team from going out at all, because I didn't want to put people's lives at risk during this COVID, at the peak of COVID period. So there's a lot of tough challenges in the environment. But what are the way out? For me, I think the way out is a lot of people who have capacity for investment, who have capacity for management, and who are experienced executives. They need to take time out to study the ecosystem. They need to also understand that the model we've been running as a nation is not a sustainable model. That model of short-term returns, that model of rent seeking and rent taking, where you go in, you don't have an office, you don't have anything, you broker one transaction, you can become a millionaire. You know one person somewhere, you can become a billionaire. It's not sustainable, and it is why you see that we have a high consumer society. People are very interested in buying luxury items and showing up, but they don't have businesses that they can use to substantiate those lifestyle that they are living. It's mainly a brokerage society, and a brokerage society is not sustainable. Now that we are all at home, we know the real industries. The real industries are the industries that are producing, like the food industry. The entire value chain in food is producing, and they are still open. So we need a total mindset shift. We need a total reorientation as a people. A lot more people who are in the agribusiness space need to educate people, need to encourage them. We need to put the word out there. For me, it's a whole system, you know. It's both along the value chain and the ecosystem, all the people around, the media, the regulators, the government. We all need to put more work behind the talk, because we talk a lot. Since God knows, I'm in my 50s, or and since I was a child, I've been hearing about Operation Feed the Nation, food sufficiency, this, that, name it. But guess what? We are still, the same thing I was hearing 40 years ago is what my son is hearing. It is sad. We're not making progress. We're not making, so the narrative has to change, and that's why for those of us who have come in from outside the traditional agricultural industry, we need to let people know that this thing works. My father was a farmer for almost 40 years, and that's what he did till he died. And he did not live the life of a pauper. He did very well with his oil palm plantation. So I grew up in a farming environment. I grew up in a farming family. And that's why I was able to start my own agribusiness without fear, because I know it will work, but it requires patience.
Well, all right. Now that you've mentioned it, because I was going to play, I think I'll still bring up that video. During an interview, the particular video was recorded in 2016. And even in 2017, again in Germany, when Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the African Development Bank, is one of his major concerns is emphasizing on us understanding that agriculture is a business and not just a way of life, something that you do or after retirement, when you are old and you are not really so active. So that will bring me to this question now, that how much of knowledge, in terms of the processing industry, because there is this video you shared, a tweet you did on something you got to know about the processing of banana and and plantain. And a lot of things they make out of banana. I'm talking about weave on, clothing, sanitary pad and other stuff. So that will make me ask, how much knowledge, human capital do we have for the processing industry in Nigeria to drive the processing industry?
Yeah. In terms of, you see, what the situation is that when you're talking about processing, you start with the equipment, the processing equipment. Now, what we see is that there are two kinds of processing. You have the small scale, and the large scale. Now, when it comes to the large scale, it relies a lot on importing equipment. You need to import a lot of equipment that are capital intensive. It's a capital intensive venture. It takes huge amounts of capital. And because of the quantum of capital you need to process on a large scale, a lot of things have to be in place. And such like infrastructure, like Auntie Helen mentioned just now, she mentioned infrastructure, and we talk about like electricity, power supply. We talk about roads, we talk about government policy, taxation, regulation, and so when you look at all those challenges, because there are all challenges in Nigeria, when you're talking about the uncertainty of power supply, and other things. Then you're talking about things like forecasting, although, in recent years, it seems like that has reduced. But when you are looking at that over a long horizon, like, you're looking at over 5-10 years, because if you're going to invest in processing, large scale processing, you're talking about 10 years of investment before you can start to see returns. You're talking about 5-10 years. So if you have that kind of horizon for investing, you need to be sure that government policy will remain constant. You need to be sure that how are you going to power your equipment? What about maintenance? What about policy? What about taxation? All those things are what discourages people from it. So you're talking about know-how. Yes, we've got a bit of know-how, and what we don't have in know-how, we can actually, our diaspora, what the resident Nigerians, what we resident Nigerians don't have in know-how, we can get from our diaspora. We have a lot of Nigerians working in all sorts of industries abroad that can bring their knowledge and experience to bear in our local industry. Yeah. So beyond that, I think that what we need is we need more stable government policy that guides how we process and we manufacture in Nigeria, that gives peace of mind to potential investors and operatives in the environment. All these things I mentioned them before, I mentioned them again. I said things like government policy, regulation, infrastructure, all these things, you have to be clear, and they have to be like stable over the long term, to give people that want to invest in a sector some kind of peace of mind that if they put their lot of money into this venture, that they will not be cut out. That's some of the reasons why some of our people prefer to import, because they look at it and say, if they invest so much and something changes tomorrow, they may lose their money. So that's what encourages people to quickly just instead import and dump in Nigeria. But if the government can put a mechanism in place that is like something long term, that assures people that, okay, this policy will not change for the next 10 years, it can encourage people to come in and take advantage of it. So that's my own suggestion.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Though I don't want us to go into politics or government policies, so I'm just going to skip the other question I was going to ask, which is, of course, about sustaining government policies. Because most of the time, what we see is that once we get into an election cycle, election period, as it's getting close, you start to see panic in the manufacturing industry, because they are not really sure of what the policy of the next president most times will be for that particular industry. I recall after 2015 election, something happened in the tomato paste processing industry, where this man, his name skipped my brain now. He rally ran media. I was just talking about how he invested millions of dollars into the processing, and government policy were allowing people to still import into Nigeria then. So going by that, does that mean that players or those who are interested in manufacturing, the processing of food, should start paying attention to the campaign policies of political parties, and that way they get to vote not based on the individual but based on the policies of that political party? Should we start paying so much attention to that, Auntie Ellen?
Okay, so one thing is constant. Whichever party has come into power in the past 20 years of return to democracy, 21 years of return to democracy, they always had food sufficiency, food security, promotion of agriculture as an agenda. Now, what usually affects us are the policies they make around other areas of the country, of the economy, around imports, around tariffs, around movement of goods and services, around public-private partnerships, around the currency, around our fiscal policies. So those are the things that ultimately affect us. And because agribusiness is just like any other business that is affected by government policies, some of those policies have adverse effects. You know, for instance, the government woke up sometime earlier this year and said that only 5 companies will import milk. What informed that decision? Why did you decide to start allowing some people bringing milk in? For how long are you going to do that? What is the incentive for local production? There are a lot of things around politics that affect us. When it comes to agri, the government has always been very good as far as policies are concerned. But you see, some of the policies they make around other aspects of the economy end up having adverse effects on the agriculture sector or the agribusiness sector because it is not living in an island, it's not in a cocoon. So everything that affects other area affects us. So in terms of their policy towards agriculture, fantastic. Every government that has come in has always had a good policy towards agriculture. But you see, the dynamics of other decisions on other areas is what ends up adversely affecting the agribusiness space. So like I always said, the volatility of policy making in all areas of our economy, it gives us a big problem. And you usually don't have enough time. A government wants to change the policy and they just give you maybe 1 week notice. They just give you maybe 1 month notice. And businesses are not planned that way. Business owners tend to plan on a longer horizon. Some people plan for 12 months. What they will do in 12 months' time, they started planning it today. What they will do in 3 years' time, they started planning it today. But the government just wakes up and disrupts everything. So those are the things that we have to grapple with. Let the government see that there is a total system. And when you make a policy in one area, it affects every other area, including agribusiness. So for me, I'm okay with their policy.
Okay.
Volatility is an issue.
Okay, I'm just going to play this video by Femi Adesina now. That will just lead us to the next question. Because now that we've talked about the policies are good, the politics and everything, there's one reason I want us to listen to this. The first time I saw it, it just resonates some of the thoughts I've been having about development, Africa, which for me is the more we produce what we consume, the less we import in Africa, it's going to affect other industries in other countries or other economies. So could it be that, maybe we'll just listen to the video together and then I'll drop the question.
Okay.
Well, I think first and foremost is to recognize that agriculture is not a way of life. Agriculture is a business, it's a wealth-creating sector. You know, you take a look at Africa today in total, Africa spends, $35 billion a year importing food that it should be producing. And if we do nothing about that, by 2025, Africa will be spending another $110 billion importing food. So the things that have to change is how we take agriculture. We must take agriculture as a business that can create wealth and revive our rural communities. The second thing that has to change is that for all the things that Africa produces, I see Sir Jeff over there producing maize, but also whether it is rice, whether it's cassava, whether it's coffee, whether it's cocoa, whether it's tea, whatever it is, or cotton, Africa has to absolutely add value to everything. It makes no sense today that Africa accounts for 75% of the global production of cocoa, but Africa gets only 2%. 2% of a $100 billion market for chocolates. So the price of cocoa will fall, like it has just fallen. Again, Cote d'Ivoire is losing $1 billion as a result of that. But the price of chocolates never goes down. The price of cotton will fall, but the price of textiles and apparels will never go down. And so the price also of coffee beans will fall, but never the price of brewed coffee that people are making money all the way to the bank. And so we've got to make sure that we make agriculture value chains that allows Africa to add value to everything it produces. And that's why within the African Development Bank, we've taken this very seriously, that we're going to invest $24 billion of our own money into agriculture over the next 10 years so that Africa can be totally food self-sufficient. And secondly, Africa can participate in global value chains for the things that it produces. It should add value. It should be making a lot of money. Agriculture is not a way of life. Agriculture is a wealth sector, and it must be treated exactly like that.
Exactly.
Okay. Well said. In fact, so one of my major concerns, they always be that if we develop agriculture in Africa, it become as commercial as it should be by investing more in food processing. We indirectly will be affecting the economy of other countries. Like I saw a report about different business owners in Thailand complaining due to the rice revolution in Nigeria. So, do we really think it's about the political leadership in Africa or the external factors affecting Africa in terms of processing? Based on going by what the president of the African Development Bank said, are we?
Yeah, I don't. I think that orientation-wise, I think our orientation is part of the problem. Our psyche has over the decades been tuned towards importation, and buying foreign goods at the detriment of our own. So I think it is a demand pull problem. Our mindset has to change. Our mindset has to change before, because politicians are the same everywhere. Politicians basically go with the direction of what the people want. So I think our own mindset has to be more favorable towards producing internally, processing and manufacturing things here. So once we are interested in that, and we make our desires known to our political leaders, then they will pick it up from there. But in the situation we have now, most of us are not. We are not oriented in that direction. So most of us just want the easy way out. But here we are presented with problems of unemployment and so many other challenges, insecurity, and so on, where we realize now that we cannot continue the way we've gone in the past. So that's why the government, has to come in here to change our mentality, by trying to bring us to appreciate more of producing, what we consume here. So that's my own contribution.
Auntie Henley, thank you very much.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Awi just said. There's no external factor stopping us from developing the sector. It is we, the people, that have to decide what we want to do. I'll give you an example. When I started exploring the food processing business in 2016 December, somebody actually called me, my friend, and said, Helen, you mean this is what you want to be doing now? Why would you leave a consulting career and start doing this? How many of this oil will you sell before you make 1 million naira? And this person was in the finance sector. So that tells you the mindset of people towards what we do. People look at it and they're like, when I can do oil and gas, when I can fund LCs that are importing containers, when I can fund all sorts of things that are not enduring. Okay, so it is the people that have to change their attitude towards this agriculture business. And when that person told me, I laughed, because I also remember growing up as a child when one of my father's friends came to him and said, Chief, you mean that it is farm you want to start going to now? A whole you. And my dad said, yeah, that's what he wants to do. That he has over 200 hectares that he wants to cultivate. That he will do it. He will do it. The same man, fast forward to like 1989. By then, my dad had become the largest cassava farmer in Bendel State. The same man came to the
Wow.
house and wanted my father to come and show him how to start his own farm. So it's the same attitude. If you have an easier option, why do you want to go for the difficult one? It's the reason why you don't see a lot of research and development activities going on in Nigeria. Even most of Africa, we don't research, we don't investigate, we don't try to explore to make things better. That is why that sector is not. It's a chaotic sector. It's a very unattractive sector. But if people who know what they are doing come in and structure the sector and take advantage of opportunities, then it's going to be a great sector. So there's nobody holding us back. We are the ones holding ourselves back. Until we change that mindset and that attitude, the sector will not grow.
Oh, okay. Interesting. We are the one holding ourselves back. One other thing.
Are we having a lie? Are we only talking for the lie at all?
True, you have said the truth. Fact. You have said the facts. No lie at all. No lie. Now, correct you talk.
So, okay, I want to ask this part now.
Yeah.
Is that funding. I remember there was a period I was thinking of going into Gary processing, because you get one time. Okay, you are smiling. Yeah, Gary processing. Yeah, because there was a time I not very comfortable with the Gary who they see for markets, dirty, the sand and everything. So I started reading about Gary processing and how to have this the stainless steel. We no go make those things then burn. So some of the people, that was back then in 2015. So I spoke to some people, fabricators in Nigeria, and I discovered that even some of them, where they think say they would advise on how we can achieve fabricate those things together. They give me contact of companies in China that will produce that thing for less and bring it into Nigeria. So at that point, I got so discouraged that, okay, because I'll first change my Naira to dollar, have those, and I have to buy tickets, go China to see. So when it comes to funding, particularly now, because there are two things I don't mix together already now. Funding, which Auntie Ellen does talk about. Apart from the Bank of Industry and Bank of Agriculture, which other body they support the agribusiness in terms of the processing? Because I'll come to, because I've done also something on rice, so that you know why I'm so interested in agriculture, and I got to know that all the lie, there are so many things they say to us on radio and everything about fertilizer that it's not really true. They are not subsidized. So apart from these things, how do you really get the funding? Who else is supporting?
Well, if you ask me, if you're talking to me, well, for processing, it's beyond Bank of Industry, and the other one you mentioned, we are at the mercy of the
Bank of
commercial.
Industry,
Yeah, we are at the mercy of the commercial banks. If you're talking about conventional banking, those are the commercial banks, and the commercial banks do not have much knowledge or interest in agriculture. They are not interested in agriculture or agribusiness right now. So it's a very difficult situation, especially for the small scale processing sector. In the small scale sector, because the larger scale people, they're able to probably bring in funding from abroad and so on. But we in the small scale processing arena, we access to funding is a big challenge. So we have to be very creative in seeking for investment, talking to people that are potential investors, structuring a business plan in a way that will be attractive to those investors. And as Auntie Ellen just mentioned, these guys are short-term investors. Nobody wants to put down money for 3, 5 years before seeing an interest. So you have to be able to convince them that you are going to bring in returns within a year or less, which is so challenging. So very few business can scale that hurdle of being able to draw in financing from people that are short-term investors and still meet the returns and still succeed and survive. Very difficult. It's very difficult. That is our biggest challenge. And it's not yet been, because what you're having is CBN. CBN itself is the one having to go and put money into processing. And CBN can only meet the biggest people and maybe some people that are medium sized. But the small guys are out of the loop. So the small guys don't have access to it. You understand? We don't have access to the kind of funding we need for business because CBN can't do it on its own. We need more institutions that finance small business, small processing business that is tuned to agric. There are other businesses that they fund. They fund, if you're doing importation, you get funding and so on. But agribusiness is having a problem with funding. That's it. It's a challenge.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Auntie Ellen.
Okay, Awe, please, let's talk after this. You get my contact from Tweetry because I have a package that I'm working with to support small scale processors. So the thing here is, Awe said something that is driving the entire narrative, and that is the way the investment is structured. It has to be structured in a way that the financiers or funders can understand it. People usually don't, who are in the investment space, they're usually not encouraged when you tell them that I may not return a profit until 5 years. I may not even start generating steady revenue until 6 months to 1 year because I have to take my product to the market. There are so many dynamics that a lot of funders don't understand. But I'm encouraged to say that there's some level of progress. It's not the way it used to be, but there's some level of progress in the financial sector. Now that oil has collapsed and so many things are not working, and thank God for COVID, it has opened the eyes of bankers and financial institutions to the potential and the reality of agribusiness. It is not something they understand, they don't have the patience, and they're not willing to take that risk. But now that things have changed in so many other sectors, they are now beginning to look at it. We find that there are more businesses wanting to support technology. But technology on its own is just a tool. It supports the real sector. So now people are beginning to see banks like Nesta Microfinance is now coming up. They're helping agri. Sterling Bank is also very big on agri now. A few of the banks are beginning to have functional agri desks and trying to understand how small and medium businesses work. For me, I have a consultancy that is actually working in that space to help facilitate access to funds for small food processors. Because without capital, you cannot grow. Not just one-off capital, you need a steady source of capital to fund the various cycles of your business. That's why in developed countries and most other countries of the world, they have a steady pipeline of access to overdrafts. You can always get overdraft, you trade, you pay and go. That's the only way you go. You must expand your capital. So that is a big challenge, but I think there are some changes. We have some angel investors, we have some venture capital still coming in, trying to understand the space. So there's hope, but a lot of what we are doing now, we need to do more with increased visibility for the industry so that people can understand what we are doing. They don't understand that. For me, that from my own experience, having been in the corporate world and now doing small SME consulting and food processing, a lot of people in the corporate world do not understand our reality. So we have to teach them, you have to enlighten them so that they can get more interested. I mean, someone like Awina, we'll be talking about financing as a challenge, especially for small or processing businesses. There should be an authority who is guiding financiers to say, look, believe me, I know what I'm saying. This thing will stay, this business will stay, it will grow. You just need a steady source of capital for like 2 years. Because unlike most businesses, in processing, as you are making the money, you have to reinvest in expansion. Unless you want to remain a small business forever. If you don't want to remain a small business forever, you have to make investments on a steady basis. It will change. I'm very positive about that. I can see a ray of hope, and I believe that as more people understand our ecosystem, we will get access to better funding.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. There's something else I was going to ask, which is about if we remove funding from the way now. One other concern is that let's take the issue of the local rice, for example. One of the things people talked about is that one of the things people talk about is we are bringing it to a close now just after this. It's about comparing locally produced rice to imported rice. Initially we had so many complaints about having particles in the rice. So that will bring me to it. How do we ensure that the standard is it can compete anywhere in the world, whatever we are producing or we are processing here in Nigeria? Auntie Ellen, for example, you produce the Auntie Ellen granite oil, and we understand that those who are into that sector know that there are some oil that are very high on cholesterol, which it's advised against and everything. So how do we ensure that the food we process here in Nigeria meets the best standard anywhere in the world?
Okay, I'll tell you, since
just before you go.
Yeah, I just want to say this, since you use my product. One of the things that Nigerians have to have is confidence in our products. I saw something going around today about how Japanese students had to use Japanese pencils. And because even though they were not perfect, they had to keep using them until they become perfect. So that's the same thing with us as Nigerians. It costs a lot to package your products. By the time you buy your containers, you do your branding, you do it costs a lot. At the end of the day, it makes you very uncompetitive. It makes your product sell at a price that is far higher than the cheap imports that come in large volumes. And even when you become large and big, you still will not sell at the same price, because you are selling products that are straight from source. They've not been over processed. They have no additives. They have no chemicals. They are organic. I can in quotes. They are made from crops and animals that were reared here without any artificial inclusion. So we producers in Nigeria are producing the real thing. If you ask me, if I go anywhere, I'd rather buy a made in Nigeria than any imported product, because I am sure that the manufacturer in Nigeria who has a NAFDAC number has gone through some rigor to give you a good product. And if you go around the market and check most made in Nigeria products, they are good. I can say that authoritatively. They are good. What we are going to need to improve on are our processes, our packaging, our finishing, and we will get there. As more people have access to capital, they can buy better equipment, they can have more less processes, less rigorous processes, less manual processes, and then the output gets better. So for me, it's a process, and eventually it will get better. But I prefer made in Nigeria any day, anytime to any product.
Okay, I wait before I let you say something on that. Auntie Ellen, we have to let you go now. I understand you have another side schedule coming up. Auntie Ellen, Ellen Imore, yeah,
Emore.
she's the Emore, yeah. I know I got it right the first time. Ellen Emore, she is a consultant, SME consultant, and also she is into food processing. She is the co-founder of Auntie Ellen Foods, And of course, I'll show you some of our products, the anti-Ellen groundnut oil, even as we let her live. Thank you very much, Ma, for joining us and for your time.
Thank you so much, Titi. Thank you, Awe. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
Awe, so that we can connect. Thank you, Titi. I wish you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, Awe, about
yes.
the global competitiveness now. So, what do you have to say to what she said?
Yeah, I think it takes time. Yes, in terms of quality, yes. Right now we may not. I mean, our quality may not be the same with others. You know, it may not be as high as the others in the market. But it takes time. It will take some time, and then also standards. We have our SON and so on, other bodies that try to standardize what we produce and achieve some level of quality. So, but as she said, as Helen just said before going, it will take time. We need to have a steady level of manufacturing, steady before we can get to so it will take time. So that's my own suggestion. It takes time and standard. But consistency is important. It's important to be consistent. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You are into cassava processing. You are doing so much. Let me just put a question to you on cassava processing, because we know we can get so much from cassava. There is the biofuel angle. There is also being as industrial products like starch and even ethanol and other things you can get from cassava.
Yes.
What would you say the challenge is when it comes to this industrial products that can be produced from cassava? Why do we still have to import so much into Nigeria?
Believe me, you see, it's something that we're just so used to. For example, I'll give you an example of something that comes from cassava. As I said before, starch, is so vital to a lot of for food, especially. Is a vital food ingredient in the manufacturing space, and we find ourselves importing a vast majority of the starch that we use in our industries in Nigeria. We have, we're not putting enough effort, we're not paying enough attention to, getting, starch. Like I'd said in some of my tweets earlier that the way we ignore our cassava starch in Nigeria is like buying a snack like gala. You buy gala in hold up and you eat the nylon and throw away the gala. That's what we are doing with starch, because starch is actually more valuable than gari. So when you are producing gari from cassava, in the process of producing gari from cassava, you're actually wasting a higher value of starch than the gari you are processing. So, for example, if you take 1 ton of cassava to produce 250 kilograms of gari, the value of starch that you are losing in that small scale process is more than the gari that you have produced. And a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people just don't know this. So the challenge for us, and I think also, what you mentioned earlier comes in. You talked about standards. The challenge for us is how to produce this starch small scale in a way that industries can utilize in a sustainable way and acceptable way for industries to utilize. Because what you have in the small scale setting is probably you have a rural area, and the way they produce their gari, if you are going to train them to produce starch, you have to have a strategy that they produce this starch in a way that the industry can use. So there has to be a system or a setup that utilizes, first of all, you train them. How do they get the starch before they make the gari? You train them, then there's this process of collection and processing, before you can now package it for sale to industries. So that middle ground is the part of the value chain that is a bit missing. It's missing in Nigeria right now, and that is where government can play a role. If government comes in, people like us have this vision too, that we want to get more, because, for example, if you have a small scale processor that buys cassava in the market and then processes it to make gari, and you can teach that person how to double their income from that by also getting out starch and selling it. But not only that, if they get out the starch, it has to be somebody that's ready to offtake that starch. There has to be somebody there that will not take that starch from them. For example, you have people that buy gari from them, so they don't have to go anywhere to sell their gari. The gari buyers come from the rural area, from the urban areas to the rural areas to buy gari. Same way, we have to have a mechanism where there is a collector somewhere that buys the starch from them, and that person puts the starch together and processes it and adds value and sells it to the industries. And then there has to be a corresponding government policy that bans importation or punishes people for importing starch, as far as we have the capacity to produce that same starch here. So you can see that is the thing. That has to be done, because we have a large capacity. I mean, starch is a globally traded product, and it has a high value. In fact, pound for pound, ton for ton, starch is more valuable than crude oil. If you talk about weight for weight, starch is more valuable than crude oil. And yet, we have the capacity to produce so much starch in Nigeria, and we are still importing it. And the one we produce, we are wasting it. So that has to change. Policy needs to go in that direction. So I don't know whether I've been able to throw some light.
Yes, yeah. You have.
Yeah.
You have. And interestingly, I just saw that we've stayed for over 1 hour already. I just wanted to keep the conversation very short to 1 hour, because I understand that we cannot talk agri processing for 30 minutes. So, but at this point, I understand that you have other schedule, and I hope we can definitely do this some other time, and
Yes.
put it, and maybe just do a focus on cassava processing, because today we're all around about processing. So maybe when we do a focus on cassava processing, in fact, we can get enough time to extend everything and look at it extensively.
Yes, sir. No problem.
I have to say thank you very much for joining me on the program today.
It's my pleasure.
Yes. Awe Onisokuso is, that name still they make me laugh, because you're bad me and I like he's the CEO of Integrated Cassava Processing and Allied Industries. Thank you very much, sir, for taking time out to be a part of this program today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
And I have some tweets I've put together about some of the things we have been sharing on the Twitter. We'll end that with this. But thank you very much, sir, for being a part of the program, sir. Thank you. All right, guys. So we'll do this again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. It's going to be more of party, music, and entertainment. So I just leave you with this combination of video I've put together from Auntie Ellen's food and also a waste tweet on agriculture and processing in Nigeria.
Welcome to another season of Auntie Helen Cooking, Auntie Helen Powered Cooking. So today we are cooking rice stir-fry, chicken stir-fried rice inspired by Selma DDD. So, but we're going to complement with the fish. So that's my fish seasoning. Try some Auntie Helen oil, combi stew. Look at this. I'm going to pour the egg, and I'm sure my assistant is here. This cup is stew now. Pour the egg, and I will show you what the egg looks like. Whoa!
All right, guys. I just discovered that. Okay. There was a mix-up. I couldn't bring out some of our waste tweets. But anyway, thank you very much for your time. This is where I say goodbye. On behalf of everybody, my guest, Will Nisokusa, and of course, Ellen More. Yeah, we'll say bye. Let's do this again tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Bye from me.